Presidential Center. My name is Skip Rutherford, and I'm your Dean of the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service, and we're honored to have you with us today. We're extremely honored to host this program, and on your chairs is a listing of our upcoming programs, which are part of our academic curriculum here at the school to enhance our students' experience. There are many special guests here today, and at the risk of not introducing everyone, I do want to introduce a special friend of mine who's here somewhere and has been here, the chairman of the board of the University of Arkansas trustees, the president of the Arkansas Farm Bureau, and my colleague's classmate. Would you welcome Stanley Reed? The University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service is the 7th school named for a former president, the 3rd on the campus of the Presidential Library, and the 1st to offer a master's degree in public service. Our students are involved in a wide variety of public service projects locally, throughout the state, nationally, and internationally. One team of our students this semester is working with a farmers market cooperative in Forest City, and other students are working in Phillips County, and this summer they will begin their international projects, taking them to all corners of the world. So this is an exciting opportunity for us to have this discussion about American and world agriculture today. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Milo Schultz. Milo joined the University of Arkansas in 1992 as the Vice President for Agriculture. In this position, he has administrative responsibility for both the Agriculture Experiment Station and the Cooperative Extension Service. Before moving to Arkansas, he was associated with the Texas A&M University System. His tenure there included Associate Director of Extension and Associate Director of the Experiment Station. He has held several state, regional, and national agricultural leadership positions. He's a native of Illinois, earned his degree from Western Illinois University and Iowa State University. Please welcome Dr. Milo Schultz.
Thank you, Skip. Good morning. Hey, it's good to look around the room. There are lots and lots of friendly faces of agriculture in the room, and we're very pleased that everyone can be here this morning. We've got a very special treat, as you know. The Clinton School has a very special treat, and that is to hear from 2 members of the United States Senate who are very actively engaged in agriculture and very actively engaged in the new farm bill. I do look around, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask a number of members of our General Assembly, who I believe have taken time out from the Ag Committee supposed to meet this morning, to be down here. Would y'all stand up and let us recognize you as members of the General Assembly? Thank you for being here. We had a long discussion in the back room, and decided that we wanted to first introduce to you our guest, the guest from Arkansas from the state of Georgia, and that's the Honorable Senator Chambliss. Senator Chambliss actually was first elected to Congress in 1994. He was instrumental in 2 farm bills, one in the House, and in November of 2002, he was elected Georgia's 63rd United States Senator. He's a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and the Senate Rules Committee, and the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. He is the ranking member of that committee. Senator Chambliss has a long-standing history of being very supportive of agriculture, and I know in your bio, Senator, it says that 1 job in 6 in the state of Georgia is dependent upon agriculture, and that's really outstanding. I have to tell you, 1 job in 5 in Arkansas. But would you please help me welcome Senator Chambliss to the stage for his remarks.
Dr. Schultz. It's indeed a privilege for me to be here for 2 reasons today. First of of all, when I come to Arkansas, I don't need an interpreter. Secondly, when my great friend Blanche Lincoln says show up, I show up. Blanche has been a dear friend since my days in the House. She was elected a couple of years before me, and we became friends early on. And what a great member of the United States Senate she has been, and what a great public servant she has been. And when you get into foxhole on agriculture, there is no better ally. And she and I have had the privilege of working together on any number of issues together, but ag is where our focus has been on several major issues, and she is a great lady and certainly a great asset to the United States Senate and a tremendous asset to Arkansas. So I'm pleased to be here for that reason. Secondly, anytime I have the opportunity to come visit with folks who are engaged in agriculture directly or agribusiness, I know that I am among the folks who represent the heart and soul of America, and the folks who simply make America the great country that it is. So I really am pleased to be here this morning. What a great facility. I'm kind of glad my vote against Clinton didn't count. This is nice. We have a presidential library in Georgia, and I just told Blanche, I said, I'm embarrassed to say I came to the Clinton Library before I went to the Carter Library. I'm going to have to go to the Carter Library now just to make amends. But I am indeed privileged to be here to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. I live in Moultrie, Georgia, which is in Cochran County, right down in the southwest part of the state. My home county of Cochran County is the most diversified agricultural county east of the Mississippi River. We're big cotton, corn, and peanut, and excuse me, not cotton, corn, and cotton, peanut, and tobacco producers, some corn. We're not a major producer over our way, but we also grow about every fruit and vegetable imaginable. My son-in-law is a farmer. He is a produce farmer. And I'm very proud of Joe. He works hard, and thank goodness has been successful. As we've been through a couple of farm bills, Blanche will tell you, we all get pretty emotional in those farm bills. And in 1996, I'd only been in Congress a couple of years, but we were hot and heavy into that farm bill. The peanut program was coming under attack. We won the vote by one vote on retaining the peanut program. Blanche was such a great ally then, but I got pretty emotional. One of my friends came up to me one day on the floor. He said, Sachs, I don't understand this. He said, you are normally just a low-key guy. You don't have a lot to say unless it's meaningful to say it. And he said, I don't understand why you're so emotional about this farm bill. I said, look, my son-in-law is a farmer. I know how expensive his wife is to maintain. You've got to have good ag policy. But I will be going into my third farm bill, and I guess Blanche, it's your third farm bill we'll be going into. This is by far, folks, the most serious challenge that we have had yet in the development of farm policy. Every farm bill is difficult, but in both 96 and in 2002, we were in different budget times. 2002 particularly, we were in surplus budget times. Today, we're looking at the largest deficit our country has ever seen. Ag is always an easy target. We're criticized for giving so-called subsidies to our farmers. I never refer to them as subsidies. I look at the payments that the government makes to our farmers as an investment in agriculture, an investment in safety, food safety, an investment in national security, because that's exactly what it is. And you're going to hear us talk a lot about national security and food security as we debate this next farm bill. But there are two influences that are going to be present in this farm bill that we did not have in 2002. First of all is the budget. We're in a very difficult time from a budget perspective, and we had a surplus we were looking at in 2002, and while that did not mean we had all the money we wanted to spend on agriculture, we were certainly in a better position to negotiate than what we are today. The other major issue that's going to have a tremendous influence on this farm bill is trade. Now, I'm a free trader. Blanche is a free trader. We simply think that given the opportunity that our farmers who grow the highest quality of agricultural product of anybody in the world, if they have the opportunity for their product to be sold to any market in the world, and we can have access to those markets, then people will buy our products because they will be in high demand. The problem we have in trade today is that U.S. trade policy is so much more liberal than the countries in the European Union or our Brazilian friends or our Argentinian friends. And whether it's the regulatory process that doesn't allow for a level playing field or whether it's the tariffs that other countries impose on our farmers, the playing field is simply not level. That's why you've seen so much in the way of publicity about the Doha round within the WTO. Agriculture is now the #1 issue from a trade negotiation standpoint, and it has not always been that way. It's only in recent years that we've seen agriculture reach the profile from a trade perspective that it ought to be. And now we are the #1 issue, and it is the issue that is holding up a completion of the Doha round, but it's being held up for the right reasons. Our trade negotiator, Susan Schwab, is doing, in my opinion, a fantastic job of negotiating on behalf of American farmers and ranchers. I stay in touch with her almost daily when she's in Geneva or some other part of the world that she's negotiating, because whatever agreement she negotiates has got to be approved by the United States Senate as well as the House. And unless it's the right kind of agreement, it's simply not going to get approved. As she stated in Davos, Switzerland a couple of weeks ago in a meeting that I was in with her with every other trade minister that is involved in the WTO negotiations, she said, look, at the end of the day, what's got to happen is that we've got to have the kind of trade agreement that will increase trade between countries. And we want to have an agreement that certainly allows your products in the European Union to come to the United States, but we also expect that our farmers and ranchers will have the opportunity to have their products sold in your country. And with the deal that's on the table right now, those countries would have access to American markets, but our farmers and ranchers simply would not have access to the European markets because of the high tariffs. She said, unless we have that kind of agreement at the end of the day, then we do not have a deal that's going to be passed by the United States Senate or the U.S. House. And she looked over at me and she said, there's a guy that's going to stop it from happening. So everybody turned to look at me like there's the bad guy in the crowd. But that's okay. I don't mind being the bad guy when it comes to agricultural trade. I still get pretty emotional about it. Just very quickly, there's been a lot of publicity lately about the proposal that's come out of USDA on what we refer to as concepts or principles that they would like to see incorporated into the Farm Bill. I want you to be concerned about that from a grower perspective or from a landowner perspective. But by the same token, remember this, and I've told the Secretary from day one, we welcome his input, but Congress is going to write the next Farm Bill. And as we sit around the tables, whether it's the Senate Ag Committee or whether it's the House Ag Committee, you look at the members of those respective committees and everybody represents a commodity. Some of us overlap, but everybody represents a commodity. And at the end of the day, we've got to have a commodity title that is very strong and that provides a safety net for our farmers and ranchers so that you will know for the next 5 years or next 6 years, whatever the term of this Farm Bill is, that when times are tough and you're having difficulty from a price standpoint or from a yield standpoint, that the federal government's going to be there to give you a helping hand. We're never going to guarantee you a profit, but we simply have to have good long-term policy that allows our farmers to have that safety net. Otherwise, it's difficult for us to look you in the eye and ask you to make an investment every year where you risk all of your life savings, everything that you have accumulated and you may hope to accumulate, in hopes that you'll have a good crop that year and that prices will be good. Farm policy simply needs to provide you with that safety net to make no guarantees of anything other than we're going to try to give you the opportunity to farm another year. We have under consideration right now the proposals that were made by USDA. Some of them are good, but some of them are not so good, in my opinion. We're going to have some disagreement on the committee about that, but that's okay. That's what debate and that's what farm bills are all about. But at the end of the day, I want all of you to take great comfort in knowing that, number one, Blanche and I are going to be in the trenches together. Ag policy and farm bills are not partisan issues. Farm policy is regionally divided up sometimes, but for the most part, we stick together as Aggies. We have to stick together. We don't grow a lot of rice in Georgia. We don't grow any rice in Georgia. I eat a lot of it. And I love rice. And I'm a strong supporter of rice. And I know y'all don't grow much in the way of peanuts in Arkansas. Blanche has always been a great supporter of the peanut program because it benefits agriculture. And that's what we try to be all about as members of the Senate Ag Committee as well as members of the House Committee. We're going to be supporters of agriculture, period. So as we go through this next farm bill, we look forward to dialoguing with you about the nutrition title, which I am keenly interested in, about the conservation title, about rural development, about the many other facets, including alternative energy, that I could stand up here and talk all day about, that is going to be so critically important when we discuss it and expand the current energy title. But yet, we got to be very, very careful with that energy title because Arkansas and Georgia compete every year to be the #1 producer of broiler chickens. And our chicken farmers can only afford so much in the way of cost input into their product because the output and the price that you get for your chickens is somewhat controlled sometimes. So we got to be careful when we talk about the rising price of corn and make sure that we don't set policy that's going to encourage that. But those titles that we're going to be dealing with, that you've seen concepts and recommendations come out of USDA on, again, I urge you to look at them very closely because certainly they will be up for debate. But at the end of the day, just know that Blanche and I are going to be there working hard for agriculture, working for farmers and ranchers to make sure that at the end of the day, we do provide you with good, solid policy for the future. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Senator. We appreciate those remarks very much, and I can tell you I have a number of good friends in Georgia, and they will attest to the fact that Senator Chambliss is truly a champion for agriculture, and we really appreciate you being here today. Our other speaker is absolutely someone that everyone in this room, I believe, knows and has probably had a chance to say hello to and shake her hand and appreciates very much. Senator Blanche Lincoln was actually elected to the U.S. House first in 1992, and then in 1998, she made history when she became the youngest woman ever elected to the United States Senate and is in her second term. She serves on the Senate Finance Committee and obviously on the Agriculture, Nutrition, Forestry Committee, and also on the Special Committee on Aging. And you know, I get a chance to visit with not only a lot of folks in this room, but a lot of people around Arkansas, and I'd like to have a nickel for every time when something came up that had to do with what's happening in Washington and what impacts Arkansas, that somebody wouldn't say, well, we need to talk to Blanche about that, or I'm sure Blanche can help us fix that. And I think that's pretty much the way that the people in the state feel about Senator Lincoln. She is married to Dr. Steve Lincoln and has, as you know, 2 twin boys. And I asked her before we came out here, I said, how old are the boys now? She said, 10 and a half years old. Can you believe that? I mean, if y'all don't start to feel old, everybody remembers when they were born. Not you feeling old, Senator, but the rest of us here too. But anyway, if you would please welcome our own Senator Blanche Lincoln.
Well, just as you all remember me very large, pregnant, and in charge, so does my colleagues in Washington, as I used to go to the floor of the House. And those guys would look at me and they'd say, do you need to sit down? Thanks so much, Dr. Schultz, for your really kind introduction, and certainly for the tremendous job that you do at the University of Arkansas College of Agriculture. Milo and his wife Ann have been great friends of ours for a long time, and we are so grateful to his service to the state of Arkansas and to agriculture, but I'm enormously grateful just for his friendship, and we appreciate all that you do. I know I speak for all of you all in the room in terms of that great thanks, and I also was told that Chuck Culver's out there somewhere. I hadn't seen him yet, but he and Daddy worked pretty hard for us, and we're grateful for him too. Dean Rutherford, I want to thank you for the invitation to be here. We're very grateful. I don't know where he slipped off to, but I know he's here as well. Well, there you are down there. Really grateful to the Clinton School for this wonderful forum and the ability to really talk about something that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and that's agriculture. Now, I got to say a word here about a true gentleman and a wonderful, wonderful friend, and that is my friend that I share the stage with right here, my great colleague from Georgia, the former chairman of the Agriculture Committee, Senator Saxby Chambliss. He is a fabulous man, does a great job in the United States Senate. And Saxby, we are so proud to have you here in Arkansas. But I just want these good people to know that when it comes to agricultural policy, this is a man that follows it closely. He is quiet oftentimes, and let me tell you, that's one of the great things about him. He comes to the table to negotiate in a calm way, in a fair way, with very thoughtful reasoning when he comes to the table to talk about these issues. And I got to tell you, we need a lot more of that in Washington. He really is the epitome of a gentleman. As chairman, he was tremendously helpful to me, reached out to me in the things that we needed to accomplish in the Ag Committee, and I'm enormously grateful to you for your friendship as well, and certainly for your visit to Arkansas. We're glad to have you. He's been a great voice for all of us. We're here today to discuss the upcoming Farm Bill reauthorization, and I think Senator Chambliss has certainly laid out very well some of the time frame and challenges that we face. There is a time challenge here. Our Farm Bill does expire in September, and so we've got to start getting to work in the committee, and I think that we will. I'd like to touch on just a couple of the challenges, but most importantly, I want to begin by acknowledging some of the highlights of what our farm policy really does provide this great country, and really the world, quite frankly. First and foremost, our Farm Bill ensures a safe and abundant domestic food supply. We certainly know that. I've heard it said a lot, but I think it certainly bears repeating. If you like imported oil, you're going to love imported food. If you're just as nervous about the way that we've become dependent on imported oil, you will embrace the idea of importing your food. And unfortunately, that's what we're beginning to see. For the first time in our nation's history, we are on the brink of a trade deficit in agriculture. And I can guarantee you, absent the support that the Farm Bill provides U.S. agricultural producers like many of you all in this room, we will see an agriculture trade deficit continue to grow. And I do not think that is what the general American public wants to see. Agricultural products produced in other countries, grown with chemical application that's been banned from our growers, or certainly with environmental methods and farming methods that levels rainforest and destroys the environment. I don't think that's what the American people want to see. In addition to the commodity support, the Farm Bill also has a nutrition component that provides food security to the poorest of the poor. And I see some of the great folks in Arkansas that represent the hunger issues that exist here and across this nation, and I'm grateful for all of their help. Hope, thank you for all that you do in terms of reaching out to the poorest of the poor and the hungry that exist. I know as a farmer's daughter and having grown up in this beautiful state, in this land of plenty, it breaks my heart to think that there are those that go hungry, particularly children and the elderly, and those are definitely the most vulnerable. And I know that most of you all in this room read some of the same scripture I do, and I can tell you that I'm proud of the fact that our farm policy delivers on what many of our faiths require us to, and that is to feed the hungry and the poorest among us. Our farm policy also encourages sound environmental practices and stewardship of our nation's forests. I didn't just grow up on a farm. I grew up in the St. Francis National Forest, turkey hunting, and down on much of the White River Waterfowl Refuge and other areas of this great state that are wonderful. And I want my children to grow up with that too. And I know that agricultural producers are the greatest conservationists I've ever met. Because not only do they farm the land, but more than likely there's a shotgun in the back of their truck, Saxby, so when they're done farming, they're going to go hunting. And they want to know that the environment is safe and that it's preserved and that all of those beautiful, beautiful God-given places that we have in this great state, we're going to do our best, our level best to protect, aren't we, Nancy? Well, that's it. In addition to already encouraging the production of renewable crops, the 2007 Farm Bill promises to make additional strides towards energy independence through renewable fuels. Our Farm Bill promotes rural development through grant programs and loans and critical research projects through our land-grant colleges. Those two items beautifully dovetail. When you look at what we can do with the science that's being developed in renewable fuels, whether you're looking at biodiesel, whether you're looking at ethanol, and particularly cellulosic ethanol, if you're looking at opportunities to do something with all that chicken fat that we both race to produce the most of, being able to turn it into jet fuel. My gosh, the opportunities are endless in terms of where we can go in this country in using technologies and renewable fuels to produce the energy that this country needs. And let me tell you, the most logical place to do it is in rural America. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in terms of rural development. We need to support rural America so that it can then house those engines of the economy that will help produce that renewable fuel. Because that's what makes it most economical, is that we would have the landscape of rural America dotted with all of these incredible industries that can really infuse rural America and its economy and produce the jobs that have left our rural communities so drastically. You know, perhaps the best-selling point for our nation's foreign policy is its cost in relation to the overall federal budget. 1/2 of 1%. What a bang for your buck. What a bargain. You get all of that for 1/2 of 1%. That makes me proud as an American to know that we can be effective and efficient in the outreach that we do with agricultural policy and the initiatives of the Ag Committee and agriculture at large. A small price to pay for safe and abundant food, a small price to pay for security for many of our nation's poor, a small price to pay to protect the environment, spur rural development, and conduct valuable research. In short, U.S. foreign policy is something that farmers and non-farmers should be proud of. That's the fun part. As Senator Chambliss noted, we face many challenges as well. And those challenges include critics at home and abroad, WTO obligations that we face, ongoing trade disputes and negotiations, budget constraints. Although we are such a small part of the budget, we are routinely asked to give disproportionately to deficit reduction and to making sure that we try to make these budget numbers square. And most recently, the White House Farm Bill proposal. The fact is there are fewer and fewer members of Congress representing rural states or districts that depend on an agriculturally based economy. Not to mention fewer and fewer members of Congress that actually have a direct relationship with production agriculture, as Senator Chambliss and I do. Being a farmer's daughter and having a son-in-law that's in farming, we actually hear and know firsthand what some of those challenges are that are faced on the ground. We are constantly reminded that the challenges that agricultural producers face aren't just man-made challenges. They're also energy costs, input costs. They're very unpredictable weather patterns, things that come and go, and you have absolutely no control over it. And you deal with that, both in terms of a business, but also in terms of your psychological aspect. I remember seeing the worry lines on my dad's brow and understanding what he was going over in his mind. You know, do I put out all that, invest all that money, put all that fertilizer down, or is it going to come up a toad stringer tomorrow? What you know, is the weatherman right or not? How many times has he been wrong this month? You know, as a result, there are some vocal critics of U.S. foreign policy in the halls of Congress because they don't have those connections and they don't necessarily have really that kind of connection with the issues that come about day to day in the minds of agricultural producers. I'd like to think that if I represented a state whose economy didn't rely on the strength of agriculture, that safe and abundant food for my family and for everybody else's family across this globe would still be something that I'd take pride in dedicating such a small portion of our federal funds to ensure. Nevertheless, this isn't always the case, and it presents a challenge as we move our farm legislation through the Congress. Unfortunately, the critics don't stop there, and they include urban-based newspapers and some well-intentioned but misguided public interest groups. As I noted earlier, I believe U.S. agriculture has a compelling story, a story that I'm very proud to tell. Critics of U.S. foreign policy do not stop at the water's edge, and we must remember that. Although much of the world depends on us to make sure that the hungry are fed, the critics are prevalent across the waters. Foreign governments, on behalf of their farm sector and their international organizations representing a variety of interests, are increasingly vocal in their opposition to our support of our agricultural industry. Their principal complaints being that our farm bill distorts the world market and it prevents fair competition. They're right that the world agriculture market is heavily distorted, but they exaggerate the magnitude of the U.S. policy's contribution to those distortions, and they ignore more egregious examples that exist, and many of us bring those up time and time again. Senator Chambliss mentioned the EU in terms of their percentage of subsidizing their growers compared to what we do in this country. My belief is that these groups also overlook the fact that unilaterally dismantling U.S. foreign policy would do very little to solve what is a worldwide problem that requires a worldwide solution. In reality, the real problem is that so far, the United States is one of the only countries who has shown a willingness to seek a solution. I'd say to critics of foreign policy, not foreign policy, my accent kind of gets in the way a little there. If you want to close that gap in the disparities of global agricultural trade, the World Trade Organization is the forum in which to accomplish that goal. And it requires a concerted effort and a commitment from all parties and all countries to come to the table and discuss how they are going to also meet that demand and deal with their distortions and disparities. This is one of the reasons why I sought my seat on the Finance Committee, which is jurisdiction over international trade. It has multiple other things that we deal with, whether it's health care or taxes and a host of other things. But trade is critical. It's critical to our economy in Arkansas, and it's critical to the economy of our country. What we've seen in the WTO is that our trading partners spending more of their efforts challenging our farm program as being a violation of our current WTO obligations, rather than doing what they should be doing, and that is negotiating a new set of principles to bring down trade distorting practices worldwide and create a level playing field for everybody in the world marketplace, which should be our overall objective anyway. At the negotiating table, our trade competitions message has been clear. The U.S. should do away with their farm program and lower agricultural tariffs to open its markets to our goods. The fact is, the U.S. market is very open to foreign agricultural products, perhaps more open than any other country with a strong agricultural base, certainly more open than most. Senator Chambliss mentioned our trade representative, Susan Schwab. She has been good. She's worked hard, and I visit with Susan all the time. She's been gracious. I know she calls you, Senator. She calls me when she's in these far-off countries oftentimes to say, I just want to give you a heads up. I want you to know we're at the table. We're talking about these things, and she knows exactly what I'm going to say to her. Stick hard on rice. Make sure that when it comes to poultry and beef, that we've got fair shake. Fight hard for us, basically, is what my word is to her. And she has done that, I think, in many instances. But I do think that it's very difficult to continue that fight and demand other countries to come to the table when unfortunately our administration continues to put forward some of the types of recommendations that they have that really do unilaterally disarm our farmers. You know, if a U.S. farmer looks out at the world market, they see tremendous subsidies and tariffs, levels 4 to 5 times higher than what our own are. Steps do need to be taken to level global agricultural trade disparities, but changes must occur in places other than just the United States. Our government has consistently made aggressive offers in the area of agriculture, honestly, too aggressive actually for my taste. However, those aggressive proposals have yet to appease or compel our trading partners to make even a similar effort. And I think it's a clear indication to us that there's not really anything we're going to be able to give, except the whole farm that's going to please them. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be asking them to come to the table and make similar commitments. As a result of the Doha trade rounds, and they're becoming stalled, and our trading partners now turn their attention to Congress basically to see, you know, if the critics of U.S. foreign policy can be successful in getting us to change our agricultural support without commitments from the rest of the world to follow suit. And I think that really puts us on a slippery slope and a dangerous situation. I believe, for one, that we should not make major concessions with our foreign policy, absent firm commitments from other nations. Where does our leverage come from after that? If we give it away in the Farm Bill, we have no leverage when we go to those tables to negotiate. Another challenge that we're facing at home, as Senator Chambliss has touched on, is our federal budget constraints. I just want to add that one of the good things, and there's a few things that we've seen in the President's proposal that are good. He has added $5 billion to the total Farm Bill baseline. And I think that puts an emphasis on the fact that there is a need to make an investment. We've added titles to the Farm Bill. We've added initiatives and different types of programs there that we want to see advance. Energy being one of the biggest. But that doesn't mean we can do it on the same amount that we've historically had or traditionally had in the past. We've got to make some increases. The bad news is that it took $8 billion from commodities like rice and cotton to pay for it. Now that's a problem, because if you knock the knees out from rural America, the economy of rural America, there's no way that all of the other things that we do, investing in renewable fuels and rural development, are going to work if you knock the socks out from underneath the base of the rural economy. Brings me to just my final topic before we move on to the next segment of those questions. Concerns that I have about some of the President's proposed changes in the farm safety net. I believe that our current bill is working, and it's providing needed certainty to farm families and rural communities who depend on a strong agricultural economy. We learned a valuable lesson after the '96 Farm Bill, which I didn't support, Freedom to Farm, y'all will remember that, about what happens when you roll the dice. When you roll the dice with the security of our farm economy and you just assume that high commodity prices are here to stay, and I see this proposal making that same unbelievably optimistic assumption, and I think it's very dangerous. It's concerning to me that the administration is acknowledging that this will disproportionately hit Southern agricultural producers and have a serious implication for an estimated 80,000 farmers. The good news is, as Senator Chambliss mentioned, is that the Congress writes the next Farm Bill policy, and that what the President has provided us is just one of the proposals out there, one of the suggestions. As we go through that legislative process for the Farm Bill reauthorization, my objective will be to ensure that we continue to deliver a farm policy that has been as successful as this past one, that we continue to ensure domestic food and fiber production, that we provide food security to hungry, that we promote sound environmental practices and rural development, and that we conduct the important agricultural research that we need to allow you to stay competitive in the not-so-free and the not-so-fair world marketplace. Thanks for having me here at home in a tremendous facility to come to you today to talk and share, I hope passionately, about some of the issues that are very near and dear to my heart. And more importantly, thank you for creating such a warm and hospitable welcome to a very good friend of mine in the United States Senate, Senator Saxby Chambliss from Georgia. Thanks for having us, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you both senators. As I said, as I look around the room, I don't believe that there is a single part of agriculture that's not represented in this audience. So I anticipate that we're going to have a lively discussion with some questions. Skip, are there microphones that are available to those that are home? Okay, we have them here. If you would, move to the aisle, or they can pass the mics to you, and identify yourself and raise the question that you have, either for either senator or just open to both of them. I'm going to prime the pump just a little bit if I may. This is not a self-serving question, even though it would sound like it. But, well, the reason I say that is that there are a number of public forums that we've attended on the Farm Bill, and one of the things that really isn't asked about very often is research about it. And one of the questions, I think that doesn't just affect the land-grant universities of the country, but ARS, ERS, NGOs, non-land grant institutions. Do you, either of you, see anything on the horizon that's going to enhance what may be done in the research title? You asked where Chuck was today. Chuck actually is helping us work through the earmark issue right now, and so that prompts a part of that question.
Well, I have seen the research title as a very valuable part of what we need to invest in. Being a land-grant college in the University of Arkansas, there's tremendous opportunity there. But there's also tremendous opportunity when we see those research dollars that are multiplied when our research college industry in our colleges and land-grant colleges partners with groups like Blue Rock International, Annette Hagan is here, and others, the Nature Conservancy and other conservation groups that work together. Working with, just seeing what was done down at UAPB and the research there with fish farming, and some of the opportunities that those research dollars do in getting out into the community, economically helping our producers, but also moving forward in terms of the type of research that really makes us the biggest, the brightest, and the best in terms of production. So, I mean, I've always fought consistently for those research dollars. I think one area where you may see some enhancement is in terms of the energy, the renewable energy side of things. There are so many exciting things coming out in the renewable energy side of things. For us in Arkansas, we're not big corn growers either. But if you read most of the literature, you find too that corn is really not the best source in the long run, maybe immediately, but when you start getting down to it, it's cellulosic ethanol that's going to be the future of renewable fuels in terms of ethanol. And we've got a lot of that. You do too. We've got, trash on the forest floor. We've got rice straw and rice hulls. We've got cotton stalks. We've got switchgrass. We've got, a whole lot of things. And I think there'll be a lot more research because they're going to need to speed that up because we're not really there with the technology for cellulosic ethanol yet, but we're so close. And I think that there's going to be a huge demand to get to that point. I'm sorry, I'm rattling.
No, I want to second everything you said. I'm a big fan of research. I don't care whether it's medical research, or we pump a lot of money into NIH now. We have, gosh, man, since you have been there, I bet we have tripled the budget in NIH for the right reasons. Defense research is a major part of our defense budget. We need to continue that to make sure that 20 years from now we have the weapons we need to remain the world's strongest military power. So I don't care what area of research it is. We need to continue to put significant federal dollars into it. And agriculture is a prime area where not only do we need to continue to put our dollars in, but as you say, we need to create and promote these partnerships, and we do that. I'm sure there are a number of folks here from companies that have been partnering with USDA relative to research, but we've had a problem with ag research dollars, and that we have not seen those dollars grow in proportion to the way the budget has grown. In fact, we've seen some reductions in ag research appropriations. One reason we've seen that is that there has not been a consolidated voice for ag research coming to Washington. And it makes it hard on us sometimes to be the voices out there. And you've got competing interests coming in from other areas asking for those research dollars. And yet agriculture simply has not had a strong voice from a research standpoint. But I think in this farm bill, you're going to see something different because of what Lynn just said. It's going to be difficult to incentivize the production of alternative fuels more so than what we've done right now with the 51 cent per gallon tax credit. But what we can do is we can provide research money to encourage our researchers out there to further develop the cellulosic issue and further develop techniques that will make ethanol and biodiesel cheaper to produce, because at the end of the day, when somebody drives up to the 7-Eleven store to fill up their car with some resources fuel, the main thing they're going to pay attention to is price. And we've got to continue to pump money in for research to get our production facilities more efficient from a price standpoint. So it's critically important that we continue to put money into ag research and continue to develop those partnerships with the private sector to make sure that at the end of the day we've got the best seeds to put in the ground, we've got the best technology available to produce these crops that are the finest quality of anybody in the world.
I appreciate that, both of you. And I would say both of these senators have been strong supporters of research. We appreciate them, and I like your analysis in our NIH. That's a real nice level of public.
Remind me that
Wayne Morris, I'm a farmer from Randolph County. With the change in political climate in Florida and in D.C., do you see any hope for trade with Cuba in the future?
Well, as you all well know, I've always been supportive of opening up our trade with Cuba. It just simply makes sense. First of all, from the standpoint of the reason that our trade was blocked, it hadn't worked. I mean, to try and to produce the waves of democracy that we wanted to produce down there, if it hadn't happened in 50 plus years, I don't think that the current approach is going to work. There are other approaches we could take. The other thing is it's just not consistent with our policy across the globe. And here we've got a marketplace that's less than 90 miles off the U.S. coastline. Where we could do a tremendous amount of rice trade. And I've always been supportive of it, but I don't think that the White House is going to allow us to get as close as we want to that with this go around. It may be that we would be able to. We've always gotten to the Senate, but we've run into problems in the House, and it may be that if we can get collectively from the Congress, some type of a compromise, the president might be more willing to work. I don't know. I think it's still going to be difficult.
I've always been very cautious of opening up our trade relationship with Cuba from an overall standpoint. Castro simply has not been our friend. He's created an atmosphere that I'm not sure deserves free and open road. However, I've always been strongly supportive of trade with Cuba from agriculture and a medicinal standpoint. I think the people of Cuba deserve that. And we have opened it up from the standpoint of ag and medicinal products. The problem we have, and I have a very strong disagreement with the current administration over this issue, and that is the way in which payment for products sent to Cuba is handled. And you get into the weeds in this, but basically what the problem is where the title of the products transfers. And what we have always done is, under the rules of trade worldwide, we allow something similar to letters of credit to be issued. We sell our chickens from Georgia, your chickens, your rice from here, and the product is sent out on a cash type basis, and title is transferred somewhere in the ocean between here and Cuba. That's the way it's always worked with every nation we deal with. Unfortunately, this administration has changed the rules, and what they have said is that the cash has to be paid before it leaves the dock in New Orleans going to Cuba. And I think that's wrong. I totally think it's wrong. And we have tried to change that a couple of times. I think you're going to see an attempt to make that change again, maybe in the Farm Bill, maybe in some other piece of legislation that comes out. But if we can just simply have the transaction be a normal cash transaction, the way in which we do business with every other country, then we'll be able to sell our agricultural products to Cuba, and I assure you they will come.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. I would like to ask both senators what you plan to do about this idiotic proposal in the administration's proposed farm bill or the suggested form. What you gonna do about this $200,000 AGI that would kill this area up and down the Mississippi River on this side? Because Arkansas is #2 top producing state, Georgia's #3. It's very important to both states. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I might argue with you, we're #2 and y'all are #3. We're close enough.
We're #2.
Well, you raised a very good point, and here's the problem Blanche and I have. The administration has proposed taking the current cap for being able to benefit from farm payments from $2.5 million adjusted gross income down to $200,000. That is a drastic move, and it's pretty obvious that it's intended to strike the southeastern agriculture. We are at the heart of that particular measure. But the problem that we have is that $200,000 to the average guy is a lot of money. Now, what we in agriculture know is that $200,000 of adjusted gross income means that once you get to that point, then you got to pay for that $250,000 combine and that $100,000 tractor that you've got to have to operate your facility, that you've got to pay your land payment out of there, that sure you get depreciation for some of those capital items, but basically $200,000 would not allow you to scratch the surface when it comes to getting to that level, making your payments, and then trying to provide for your families. So that's going to be a major issue in the debate. And what I would just have to remind you of is what Lance and I both said. The administration has input, but we write the farm bill. And I will tell you, I don't know of a farmer in Georgia that has 500 acres in cultivation that probably wouldn't hit that threshold. And that's a small farm in Arkansas or Georgia. And unfortunately, some of these policymakers have no concept of what it's like when you're out there having to get dirt under your fingernail and drive the tractor and tend the crop and then get it to market. And we have to remind those policymakers, those bureaucrats sometimes, that there are real people out there that are farming every single day that have to face these practical problems that they create with this type of proposal.
Well, I'd just like to make 3 comments on that. I'll try to keep it brief. First of all, I should tell Senator Chambliss not to argue with Cecil, just because you don't ever I've never tried to correct Cecil. The issue here is recognizing diversity, both in the world marketplace. You know, oftentimes we grow what we grow in you're suited to grow. If you're a smart farmer, you will grow what your ground and your climate are suited to grow. And we are suited to grow crops that are capital intensive, which means they require a huge upfront capital investment in the land and in the equipment and in the actual maintenance of that farm, whether it is chemical application or insects and what have you, whether it's water or because of climate and a whole host of different things. Well, in order to be able to afford that capital expenditure, you've got to farm an economy of scale that allows you to be competitive. There are businesses all across the globe. We've got a lot of big ones right here in Arkansas. Walmart operates on an economy of scale so that it can offer lower prices. Well, we have to farm an economy of scale in order to be able to at least make a profit on the world market, where we don't control the world market price. So it's important for us to be able to farm. And you know, all the time, I don't know about you, Saxby, but in Washington, they say, well, we want to keep the small family farmer. I said, well, you know what? I want to keep the small family farmer in business too, but don't tell me that, you know, just because they're young or just because they're a family farm, they can't be big. My folks have to be big to be able to survive. Well, a couple of points that I would just bring out. One, they not only cap it at $200,000, but they eliminate your three-entity rule, which means you can't have that family farm necessarily with a mother and a father or a son and a father with the same kind of setup that we've seen where they can pull together their assets and be able to maintain that family farm. The other thing is it's a $200,000 adjusted gross income cap on farm and non-farm income. So if you just happen to have a grocery store that you own and you're farming, or your wife works and she's a lawyer in Little Rock and you farm in Loma, or if, you know, what other profession do you know out there that we're going to tell you what you can make? I mean, we didn't cap what CEOs could make when we offer tax benefits to oil companies. You know, we didn't cap those kind of things, but we're talking about farm and non-farm income. And all the talk in the world about rural development is not going to help if we suck out the resources and the capital of rural America from underneath its legs. And that's what happens. If you tell these families that have been farming, and, you know, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to have been farming for 5 or 7 generations, and maybe perhaps to own the majority of your land. But to be docked because you do, and because maybe perhaps you own a seed company and farm, or maybe perhaps you I don't know, have another business out there, additional income. You're going to be limited in what you can produce on your farm because of that. And I don't think that's right, and I don't think it's good policy, and I think it's going to be harmful to us being able to maintain a strong agricultural production in this country. We lost our wheat markets in the 80s. We never saw them again. If we put cotton and rice farmers out of business because we don't allow them to farm in that economy of scale that allows them to be competitive, we're going to lose those markets. And in 2 or 3 years, we're not going to be able to get those markets back. And you're not going to be able to stop farming a commodity like that and then pick it up 3 years later. How are you going to pay a note on its expensive equipment and processes that Senator Chambliss mentions for 3 years while you're farming corn to stay in business? It's not going to happen. If you get out of business of farming what you're suited to grow and switch over to something else, and then 3 years later the country wakes up and says, oh, by the way, we need that food and fiber. You know, we used to be the 3rd largest rice producing country in the globe, only behind Thailand and Vietnam. And then all of a sudden people realize that the rice grown in Thailand and Vietnam, they water and fertilize at the same time because it's coming out of a river with direct sewage. I think the American people are going to say, no, that's not what I want. And then we're going to have to go back to the farm community and say, reinvest all over again to build up your ability to be competitive in the world marketplace in a capital-intensive crop. So, I don't know. It's a hard battle to fight, and Senator Chambliss says, you know, we're going to write that bill, but we're going to have to lock arms because we got a few in the Senate and the House that don't like it. We have to fight on that one. So I encourage your continued interest in involvement in that issue because it's a hard one to explain, and yet when you really get into the weeds, I think it makes sense to most Americans to keep that food and fiber production here.
Let me just add to what you said there too, Blanche, that I don't have to ask your farmers either. There's not a farmer in Georgia nor a farmer in Arkansas that wouldn't rather get 100% of his income or her income from the marketplace. We'd rather not have any government payments being made. But the fact is, because of the world situation, in particular what our Europeans do with respect to payments, the competition dictates that there has to be that safety net out there if the market does not provide that income. And that's where this provision, Cecil, really does become very, very harmful to us.
Thank you. I will say in our last question, Cecil Williams didn't go by the rules and identify himself, but he needs no introduction.
I already know it.
I do.
I'm Abraham Carpenter. I'm a farmer in Brady, Arkansas, Lincoln County. I first would like to thank you all for being here today, Senator Chambliss, and sharing our thoughts and ideas about agricultural policy and issues that affect our livelihood. I do agree that we should build on what we do have that has been successful for many years. All farmers are experiencing a far too difficult time to start having any cuts to any existing legislation. With the high energy costs and increased costs of production, farmers actually need more help instead of less. I think renewable fuels should be a major focus in the farm bill. We must do everything in our power to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. I ask that you support any meaningful legislation that may be considered concerning specialty crops because they have often been overlooked. I know that you have been supportive of a 2005-2006 disaster bill. I only ask that you try to implement that legislation as soon as possible because many farmers cannot even begin to receive their financing even for this year until they know that they will receive this assistance, and farming season is rapidly approaching. When considering funding for new or existing programs administered by Natural Resources Conservation Service and Farm Service Agency, please do not forget to include funding for technical assistance. These agencies do an excellent job administering these programs, but they are considerably understaffed with even the current workload that they already have. Once again, on behalf of all the farmers, I thank you for being here. Please come back.
Thank you. I should have mentioned when we were talking about research that we're getting pressure in this farm bill to include, from a specialty crop standpoint, additional money for research. Specialty crop growers have never had a program, frankly, they don't want one. They want the government to leave them alone and let the marketplace work. But there is a lot of pressure being put on us now to put more money in specifically for specialty crop research. With regard to your disaster issue, we had it up 2 or 3 times. I can't remember, I lost in all the votes that we've had, and I suspect it's going to be back again. We've got something coming up here in another month or so, and I would be surprised to see that issue.
Well, I just want to thank Abraham for being here. We thoroughly enjoyed working with Abraham, and he represents, I'm glad he's here to hear you because you've got a son-in-law in specialty crops and produce, and Abraham's done a great job in really branching us out in Arkansas. There was one concern in the President's proposal in terms of specialty crops in that they took the limitations off of production agriculture in terms of what they can do in terms of planting specialty crops. And there was a little alarm in the specialty crop industry about that. So that will certainly be something we watch to make sure that we don't disadvantage or throw into tailspins our markets for specialty crops. I think that'll be important. You mentioned the support and technical support for agriculture. I know you all are all extremely savvy, probably much more savvy on the internet than I am, but for USDA to think that every one of our agricultural producers out there is going to operate their farm programs and their connections and conversations with USDA over the internet is sorely mistaken. If we eliminate our FSA offices and the technical support that staff gives our farmers, it's going to be pandemonium out there. You know, as expecting you to put all of your input into the computer without any assistance. Those folks in those FSA offices work really hard. I know in Mississippi County, sometimes they're working overtime, taking computer work home, in other counties as well. We've got to make sure that we keep our technical assistance out there, both through there and through the other avenues that USDA provides technical assistance in research in other places too, and that's a great point.
Question in back.
Hi, my name is Josh Heinberg, and I'm a student at the Clinton School. And as part of the school program, we're doing a practicum in Forest City, which is in St. Francis County.
Yeah.
And it was my first experience in a small town, Mississippi Delta, and it kind of hit me that there's a lot of potential there, and you're talking about agriculture potential. How can a small community take advantage of it? You're talking about the Washington side. I'm working on downtown revitalization, and it seems like agribusiness is going to be something that they could potentially hold on to and take them into the future. How would you suggest a small town like Forest City take advantage of that? What's available?
Well, I grew up in Alabama, which is not far from Forest City. They were our rivals in football. I'm well aware of the huge need for development, whether it's downtown revitalization, whether it's job creation, and a host of different things that need to happen in our small communities. I think the first and most important thing is for the community itself to have a vision. They have to, in that vision, infuse a huge amount of patience so that they can figure out a timeline over which period of time, over which they can achieve those goals that they've set for themselves. And I've encouraged our communities, particularly our rural communities. Rural development, let me tell you, we can spend every nickel we can get in rural development. Those dollars go enormously far. Unfortunately, lots of times where we have to spend those dollars is in wastewater treatment or water systems, infrastructure needs, where as you're building a house, you call it kind of that unseen money that you have to spend in order to make sure that, one, it's a place where people want to live. Education is a big issue in those communities, making sure that the educational systems are places where people, because you can revitalize downtown, but if people don't want to live there, there's not housing and good schools and good jobs, you can't sustain it. So it has to be sustainable unless you're going to make it a place of destination. And we've tried to incorporate that into some of our rural development. So there's a lot of different things that come together. But here, where you talk about agriculture, agriculture is over 25% of our state's economy, and it's an even greater proportion of the economy in those rural communities. So if you don't have the base of the rural economy, you can't revitalize the downtown unless you make it a showcase or a movie set or a place of destination. And those are some possibilities too. I've introduced a tax bill, for runaway movies. We're sending all our movie production outside the country. I want to focus it back into rural America, where they can come shoot movies in small towns in Georgia and Arkansas, and feel like they're getting as good a benefit as they get offered in places like Canada and Romania. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, but the community has to have a vision. They've got to have a dream. I can dream their dream for them, but that's not really my job. My job is to help them make their dream a reality. And they know that my office is willing to do that. And I'm telling you, I don't leave any stone unturned. I will hassle Annette Kagan over there at Red Rock International till the cows come home. I'll work with anybody else out there that I think can come up with the resources, the technical assistance, and the other things that those communities need to revitalize themselves. And we've had some good successes, both in terms of community revitalization as well as in agriculture. We've got our sweet potato growers co-op over there working really well and working with food processing across the state. So there's some good things out there, but we got to fund them. If there's no money in rural development, if CDBG dollars are gone, which are some of the most flexible
probably the most difficult economic issue that rural America faces. I live in rural Georgia, and I served on our economic development corporation for 25 years at home. Trying to recruit industry to small towns is, boy, it gets very, very frustrating time. But there are two things that we concentrate on. First of all, if you're going to recruit industry to rural America, you've got to have transportation. You've got to be able to ship your manufactured product out of where it's located. And secondly, you've got to have a good quality workforce. What we've done, and I'm confident that you have a similar situation in Arkansas, is we have developed a technical point now where they are capable of going, we have them scattered all over the state, all in rural areas. They can go into any facility and immediately jumpstart both training free of charge to the company. And it's been a huge asset for us for getting companies that employ 75 or 100 people to work in the rural parts of our state. And we've been fairly successful in doing that.
We have time for one more question, I believe.
Senator Chambliss. Senator Chambliss, my name is Bill Gross. I'm a FSA Director in Southeast Arkansas. I want to welcome you today, and I want to also mention we're also welcoming a number of Georgia farmers to Southeast Arkansas, as we have a number of Florida farmers moving up to Georgia, and a lot of the Georgia farmers now coming to Southeast Arkansas. We're now welcoming a bunch of those farmers. A couple of questions that I want to throw out, and as you know, staffing is a major concern of our FSA offices. I'm in a heavy workload office, and I've seen every farm bill since 1978, and this is probably the worst staffing that I've seen since that era. And also, you know, as we go to a web-based computer system, the kinks in that system are worse than they've been since we've started. And I'm sure y'all are aware of that. We need to continue working on that. One program issue I want to bring up is our farm grain bin storage loan program. You know, where FSA makes loans to farmers to build grain bin storage. Back in 1978, that program allowed landowners to qualify for the bushel storage based on the number of bushels of grain that could be grown on his farm. Now a landowner can only qualify for the quantity of storage of his share. And as you know, most of our farmers in the south and southeast are tenant type farmers. So it's landowners primarily the ones who are building storage on our farms. And as we grow more corn, more grains, we're going to need more storage. And of course, the limit per person on building grain bins is $50,000 per person. That needs to be increased. The cost of steel, cost of building grain bins has gone up. So we need to increase that, and also increase the limit, the amount of bushels that landowner can qualify for, go to the number of bushels that can be grown, on his farm.
Well, first of all, let me just say that I report all that to Teresa last year. Teresa is the executive director of the FSA in Washington. She happens to be my across the street neighbor. And she grew up in the FSA office and the old ASC assistant, as you know, and she has done a terrific job. I've not heard the issue about the storage facilities, but obviously that's one of those technical things that we need to think of. That's one of the positive issues that is one of the positive problems that's coming out of this alternative fuel issue. In addition to the livestock and the poultry issue I mentioned in my opening comments, it's issues like that we're going to have to address. But I do consider it a positive because the more corn we grow, because of price being high, means more money farmers are going to make on growing corn, but they got to be able to take care of it. With respect to FSA office closings, let me just talk a minute about that. My state has 159 counties. At one point in time, we had an ASCS office in every county. We began about decisions that were very difficult to make relative to closing ASCS offices, but we did. We are now down to about 80 offices, I think, across Georgia. That's still too many. We have staffing problems just like we do here in Arkansas. Our staff, particularly in certain counties where we have a lot of production, are overworked, underpaid, and we're simply demanding more of them than what they can do. But that having been said, there are other offices that are not having that kind of demand. And what we're going to do, and I'm taking the lead in this in my state, and I'm not going to ask Blanche to close any offices without closing offices in Georgia ourselves. We're asking every state committee to develop a plan of targeted closings of offices. And not really, I hate to even say it's closing because it's going to be combining FSA offices around your states. We're going to combine 16 offices in my state, and I am catching a lot of flack for it. But what we've done is to minimize the effect. We have gone to the individual counties, and we have said, okay, you tell us how you would like for this ultimate situation to work out. Do you want to be combined with this county on the east? Would you rather be combined with this county on the west? The farmers in the southeast part of your county want to go to the county to the south, or they'd rather go to the one to the east. You make those decisions. We will give you representation on the county committees, but the fact is that unless we do combine some of these offices, the understaffing problem is going to continue. It's not going to get better. If anything, it's going to get worse. We're under some very tough budget constraints right now within FSA. So it's critically important that we address the issue and we do it now, and that we, if we move into this next farm bill, make sure that we're able to provide the services that you're going to need, particularly in those heavy areas. And we're not going to eliminate any personnel. Let me make that very clear. So if you combine an office in Coffee County, Georgia, with Lee County, Georgia, we would simply move the personnel from one county to the other, and the farmer may have to drive another 10 miles. But it's critically important that we beef up the staffs in the areas where we're having the most production and the most people coming in and out of those offices. Otherwise, this problem is going to get worse and not better. Lastly, let me say that what I told the secretary when they came and talked to us about this proposal originally was that whatever savings you achieve, there will be savings, needs to be plowed back into FSA. Because I would like to be able for every farmer in America not to even have to go to the FSA office. You ought to be able to sit at your computer in your office, fill out every form you've got to fill out for FSA, and never set foot in the office. And we'll never get to them. Because a lot of you are like me, I'm going to go to my coffee club, I don't care if they came to me. There are important reasons why you need to go to the FSA office from time to time. But it is critically important that we do achieve these savings, but we need to do it in a way that is beneficial to farmers in Arkansas, which is different from the system that it's going to take to be beneficial to farmers in my state and other places. But I do want you to know that I'm going to take the bullet first. I was chairman when I made that decision. Now I'm running member, I got to live with it. But I'm going to fight that bullet first, and I don't want to have to look Lance in the eye and say, you know, you're really going to have to close some of these offices, or combine some of these offices without having done so.
I know there's some other questions out there, but we've reached the time when we need to draw to a close. Senator Chambliss, we very much appreciate your being in Arkansas. It's clear that you're a champion for agriculture, and we would like to have you come back anytime. As they say, the light spring's always out as you hear. Senator Lincoln, you're our champion, and we do appreciate everything you do, the strong support that you provide to to agriculture in our state. We wouldn't have been asked for any greater effort than the efforts you make. So with that, will you join me in thanking both?